Good morning. Welcome. Believe it or not, we're less than 11 months away from choosing a new governor of Massachusetts. And today we continue our series of interviews with candidates for that office. With Democratic candidate Juliette Kayyem of Cambridge, former Homeland Security Advisor to Governor Patrick and Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs at the Federal Department of Homeland Security. Juliette, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. After all the self-congratulatory talk on Beacon Hill in recent years about how well we've weathered the recession and how solid our economy is, we've now racked up a couple of months straight of unemployment figures that are worse than the national average, and job growth here has just been flat at best. What, in your view, is wrong with our economy? And give me a specific example of something you'll do to fix it.
That's a great question, because I do think that job growth is probably going to be the challenge, the primary challenge of the next governor, because we see the numbers over the last 3 months, and stagnation will ultimately lead to sort of fewer jobs coming and staying in Massachusetts. I don't talk about job growth. I talk about Massachusetts job growth. I talk about we're one state with many different solutions. The strategy that the next governor has to take is what is going to be the specific job growth in different areas of Massachusetts. So the gateway cities such as Springfield or New Bedford, right? What are going to be the transformative investments that can create job growth in the inner city, transportation to surrounding residential areas, and create an economy that's thriving? And we see it in certain places, right? We've seen it in Newburyport. We see it now in New Bedford, Worcester with eds and meds. We're going to see some growth in Springfield. So that is the commitment I have, is to sort of lure those industries there, keep them there, right, through tax breaks and other tools that a governor has, and then create the transportation and housing capabilities that will have them thrive. And the answer, let me tell you, it's not going to be judged the following month, right? It has to be a sustainable commitment to be the strongest state that can attract jobs that will come here and stay here.
Well, you mentioned tax policy, yes, and obviously that's a big piece of the puzzle, because we are a relatively high tax state, and for many of these industries we're competing with much lower tax and cost of business states. When you announced your candidacy in August, you added your voice to the chorus that was then calling for repeal of the so-called tech tax, which eventually was repealed. You also said back then that if you were governor, you'd try to replace it with a, quote, different kind of tech tax. What is that?
That might be a more sort of structured consumer tax, or what you might call a product tax on the industry. So let me just be clear. The industry is taxed in other states. Our tech tax, as written, was way broad, and it made us sort of competitively at a disadvantage from other states. That's why I was against it. I've been to 44 other states in my job. We are in a competition with them for the best people, the best resources, the best investments. So that, as written, that was going to put us at a comparative disadvantage. But I am not going to sit here and say I'm never going to tax an industry that is a growth industry in the state.
Well, how would this consumer tax work?
It would be on maybe specific products or specific sort of, brain investments that we see happening in the tech industry that are not presently taxed. So I would look at, could you have a more chiseled or refined tax? But you will never hear me say I'm never going to tax that industry. This is a thriving industry that benefits from our investments in infrastructure and schools and housing that support those industries as well.
All right, let's pursue this in a moment, but first let's take a break, and we'll continue our conversation with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Juliette Kayyem in a moment. Stay with us. Back. We're talking with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Juliette Kayyem. And Juliette, just one more tax question, then we'll move on here. Our sales tax is 6.25%. Lots of people think that that's either too high or too regressive, or both. What about you? Is 6.25 a good number?
Well, I actually supported the governor's sort of decision or proposal to try to reduce the sales tax, but you can never talk about a specific tax in isolation. We all know this, right? A tax, depending on if it's sales or property or whatever tax, have to be looked at sort of all together, right? And the reason why you have to look at them all together is because you need revenue for a state that is investing in our priorities, right? So there's always going to be taxes. No one wants to raise them. Everyone wants to lower them. But we have to weigh the benefit of a particular tax with the investments that we want. And look, we know that we need to make investments in infrastructure and education. There's no question about it, not just for today and our kids today and the roads today, but also to make us competitive for the future. And that's, so with the tax debate, you know what, we're going to have a budget review, 6 months after the next governor gets in. But the tax debate has to be sort of a rational debate about the fact that the state has to get revenue to invest. There are programs that we can delete, we can get leaner, there's no question about it. But if you lower the sales tax, you're going to have to figure out how do you replace that revenue. And that was the challenge for this governor.
All right, let me move on to another area here. It should be right up your alley.
Right.
Edward Snowden, the whistleblower who leaked documentation of the scale of NSA surveillance of American citizens. I noticed he just finished second in the balloting for Times Person of the Year, for whatever that's worth. To you, is he a hero or a villain?
Oh, so first of all, I like who Time picked as first, the Pope. I think he is an important leader.
So you're in favor of the Pope, then?
I think that is a great pick. I do.
It's a tough call there, Juliette.
Compared to Snowden, it really was an easy one, I'll tell you that.
All right.
So hero or not hero, I can't answer that question. He violated law, and now he is sort of running from the law. So I don't view that as a hero, but I don't want to make it about Snowden. It is about the surveillance or the extraordinary, surveillance that was being done under the NSA program.
Did they go overboard?
Yeah, I mean, and I have constantly said any extraordinary powers. You see it in my writing. I did it here when I was State Homeland Security Advisor. We were the first state to put a privacy policy in the Fusion Center because there was no guiding principles about what intelligence was going to be shared. So it is important that people who come into government look at these programs and say, wait, why are we doing it? What sort of oversight? Is there judicial review? For how long? Most importantly, John, is it working? And that I can't actually answer, with the NSA program.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. I'll look forward to having you back here soon. Okay. And of course, when we get debate season, we'll look forward.
We didn't talk about the poinsettias.
Well, they're lovely, aren't they? Just don't let your pet eat them.
I hear. So I hear. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Juliette Kayyem, candidate for governor. That's it for us. Now, back to my colleagues for more WBZ News.